Hello and welcome to the fifth gathering of the Adventure Party on this, the 26th of April. I am your party leader, Brad Ludwig. We ask that you peace tie your swords, holster your blasters, and make sure you understand what your character's alignment is while you're gathered at the meeting table. As always, my second in command is Glenn Bittner, and he is the creator of the RPG Mistrunner. How are you, sir?
Doing great, brother.
As I understand, the reason why you've got that meaty voice there is you actually did a very manly thing today. And what was that manly thing, sir?
Made myself a steak.
That's right. You were telling me a little bit about it, but I don't. Whose recipe did you use?
Gordon Ramsay. He's got a little like 3-minute video to make the perfect steak, and it was the perfect steak.
Does he shout at the steak and tell it how awful?
Does not.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
you call yourself a steak?
Surprisingly calm. Did not call it a donkey.
I have never I've seen like brief snippets, and I always wonder if stuff's taken out of context. And from what I understand, no, not really. When you see that little snippet of him going off on somebody, that's not taken out of context at all.
No, not at all. He's not someone I'd want as my DM.
Could you imagine a shouty DM like that? Oh, Lord, that'd be a horrible... That would be something I'd want to do once, just to have the story to tell friends. Oh, my God, this one time I played this game, and this guy was just awful. He was just yelling at everybody. Oh, the stories. Speaking of which, with wonderful stories, our guest this evening is Ian Benton, and he is the reference coordinator at the UW-Madison's College Library. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing great, Brad. I'm sadly steakless. I feel much less manly.
Yeah, and Anessa, my girlfriend, and I ordered from Domino's, so now I feel like doubly sad. I had sadness delivered to my doorstep, and Glenn has reveled in meaty goodness. There's really no coming back from that, is there? You know. And I invited Ian to speak with us because yesterday, and that might not have any point of reference in time for you if you're listening to this later on in the week, but I visited Ian in Madison and spent some time with friends there, and Rob Benton, who that name should ring a bell because he was in our second episode of Adventure Party, is Ian's brother. And we were sitting down and talking about a Kickstarter that Rob had gotten on board with. I can't recall the name of the game system, but it involves time travel. And in this, you, as a party, as a group, in his idea, excuse me, was that you were time travelers.
You're going to be time cops.
You're going to be, you're right. You're going to be time cops. So your job is to maintain the integrity of the timeline. Now, his idea was to have the new recruits, in order to become full-fledged time cops, to go back to the 1936 Olympics and ensure, and we're going to Godwin this podcast right now, is to ensure that Hitler stays alive, for the purpose of the integrity of the timeline, that everything that you know and everything that existed and everyone that you have loved are still alive because you've done this horrible thing that you've had to do because it's your job. It is your job to make sure that everything that happened in the past continues to happen, no matter how horrible it is, because you need to maintain the integrity of reality.
I like the funnier side of that as soon as time travel is invented, there's going to be 12 attempts on Hitler's life every day for eternity.
And yes, that and Rob said, he'd be like, okay, next troop is coming through to make sure that this, they save Hitler's life again. That's just the final test that you have to take.
Yeah, it's like the rookie mission right out of the academy.
Yeah, which, good Lord. And then we kind of got into the more existential side of that, which is as a group, as a role-playing group, doing a game where there are certain comfort levels that everybody has in a group, and you explore themes in a game, and those themes can vary, but at the end of the day, if you want to keep that group that you enjoy, you need to kind of, while you're exploring morals, while you're exploring what heroism is, you also have to kind of balance that with the comfort level of the group. There might be a subject matter that somebody is not comfortable with. And while you want to play games that have deep meaning, that have a lot of fun, I mean, we're not just going to go, be all existential about everything that we do in gaming. It has to be fun. But is there a line? Where is that? And how do you safely navigate that by still being true to yourself as a storyteller running the game, and also balancing that with the comfort level of the group? And it was such a great discussion. I said, Ian, you need to be on the show. And by God, if a little arm twisting didn't happen, and here he is. So, yeah.
Not so much arm twisting. This is going to be fun. I'm really glad.
And I'm glad you're here too. And yeah, this is probably going to be one of the deeper episodes that I think that we're going to do. And what we want to do is we're going to get into that, but we're going to talk about some news stories that happened over the past week that really, actually the past 2 weeks, because we had to take last week off because trivia. Ian did not get a chance to play this year, and actually Glenn suddenly got ill, which after he took the 2.5-hour drive to get to Trivia HQ, got ill, and then had to make the 2.5-hour trek back, and that's sad. I didn't get to give you hugs this year and shake your hand, and Anessa didn't get a chance to meet you, and you had to travel for 5 hours before you could get back into the comfort of your own bed.
In 5 hours, there were many, many poop stops along the way.
I've had that road trip.
That's awful. I'm glad you're doing much better, though.
Thank you.
You can manage to make a tasty steak and hang on to it, so that's a good thing. Boy, on that note, all right, hey, Glenn, let's talk some news.
All right.
What do you got for us?
Well, what do I got for you? Now, a lot of you people, you're used to your pen and paper, type role-playing game and sitting around a table with your friends, and sometimes that's just not possible. And I can tell you, for one thing, long-distance Satan role-playing can be a hard thing to do. And even sometimes you like to have an aid if you're just a DM, where you got some aid. And Fantasy Grounds, been a virtual tabletop for a little while now, but they just got a deal with Wizards of the Coast to bring you 5th edition D&D basically to Steam. So you can now run your virtual tabletop on Steam using all the new stuff for 5th edition D&D. I'm kind of excited about this because a lot of people I used to role-play with have scattered. And I don't know if that says something about me. It makes me very self-conscious. But they have moved away from me. They haven't cut off all ties, so I'm thinking maybe I can do something online with them. And this gives you that opportunity. There are already other virtual tabletops out there, but this is the only one that has an actual license for the new 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, it's not cheap. But depending on what you want to get, it's not cheap. Because you have to buy the Fantasy Grounds program, first of all, which is about $40, $39, $40. Then you need to get the actual D&D license stuff. Now, there's several ways to go about that. You can go whole hog and get the Core Monster Pack, the Complete Class Pack, and eventually the Dungeon Master's Guide. Those are all going to be $50 a piece. And then they've got their campaign books. Right now the only one up is The Lost Mind of Fandelver, which is $20. However, they've got like a little intro rules thing that you can get for $3, and you can test it out, see if you like it. The other nice thing with Fantasy Grounds is that there's several different ways you can do it. One is each person who plays can get a copy of Fantasy Grounds and all the whatever books and complements they want. Or you can have just the game master, or the DM, gets what's called like the ultimate. So instead of $40, you're paying $150. But if you do that, then anyone that plays with you has access to anything that you have. So if you have the core monster pack and the player's handbook and the dungeon master's guide, anyone playing with you has access to whatever you let them have access to. As the dungeon master, you can make certain areas of certain books off limits where they can't look. So they can't go look at the maps for the adventure you're going to run. Sure. But it's really cool. I played around a little bit with it. There's a little bit of a learning curve to it, but it's not that bad. A lot of it is I found pretty intuitive, and despite the amount of time I spend online, I'm in a lot of ways a program moron. So for me to be able to figure stuff out without having to constantly reference help or videos online, that says a lot. So it really comes along pretty easily, and it's a great little tool. I don't know if you guys have ever used any virtual tabletop stuff.
I myself have actually set up an account in Roll20.
Yep.
I have not used it yet.
But for me, this is actually really timely. Just yesterday, in fact, my old high school gaming group of 15 years ago was talking about getting the band back together, and they're spread from Wisconsin to Florida at this point. So I don't know exactly which system they were looking at, but I like the idea of something that gives that kind of distance element, but also incorporates all the game management tools into it.
Well, in Fantasy Grounds, you can run other systems in it. So you can run Pathfinder, you can run Fate Core, you can run a lot of other things in it. People have stuff out there that you can download and you can add on and upload to your Fantasy Grounds account. So it's not just strictly D&D. And Roll20 works virtually the same way, except Roll20 is a free program. Except obviously there's nothing for 5th edition available for that because that's all has to be licensed through Wizards of the Coast. Pathfinder is all open game license, all OGL stuff, so that's just go out there and grab it.
Huh.
This actually makes me think of in education you get that thing where we got online courses now, like online degrees, and people just taking an entire class and moving it into an online platform. And when I think about that and the criticisms of it, I think about taking like the totality of the in-person event and putting it into a virtual context without changing it at all. So I wonder what you two think about like what you would actually add to a completely digital game. Like if there's multimedia elements to put into it, just like you'd spend time with your like tabletop design and your models, your maps, like what you would add in a multimedia context, having that extra kind of vector.
Well, one of the things that would be kind of fun to do would be, and that's going to appear in our second story here that we're going to talk about, is adding maybe some mood sounds, things like that. Riding the line of, it's easy to get distracted by having too much stuff going on at the same time. So that would be one of those things I wouldn't mind trying out to see if having mood music at certain points in time would actually work. And what is just a side thing? It's how much? The application is $40.
$40.
And then you have to buy the $50 pack.
You don't have to. It's if you want everything, you can get the $50 monster pack, the $50 player's handbook, but they've got a $3 that's just the basics of what you need to play. Okay,
and the reason why I asked that is I wasn't sure what digitally that would add to the game besides getting stats. Would that add, like a character that you could have represented as a part of like the multimedia, as it were, to add to that function?
Well, it's a lot of it like the complete core class pack that you can generate any character class and race using the program, and the monster pack gives you all the stats for all the monsters where you can drop them wherever you want. Now, a lot of that stuff you can find elsewhere too, and you can drop those in. The other one nifty thing I found when I was playing around with it is there's basically kind of like a language feature where, say for example, you're running a group and one of the players speaks Orcish, and the characters come upon a group of orcs. You can type things that only the Orcish speaking player would be able to read.
Oh wow!
That's fantastic.
So I don't know if Roll20 has a feature like that, but I know Fantasy Grounds does, where you can actually set things where certain things will only go to specific people or will only be understood by certain people.
That's
nifty.
That's exactly the thing that I think is interesting about like getting gaming in a fully digital context is what sort of tricks can you employ that would be harder to do just sitting around a table.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, teaching yourself in one other player Orcish is a bit time-consuming.
It's thieves' cant.
Yeah, there we go. I haven't heard that in forever. Oh, man. All right. Yeah, that... no, those are all great questions. I know that, like, with Roll20, if you go with the $5 a month option, you can run it on a tablet. So you can log in and run things through a tablet. So if you're not at your desktop or whatever, if you're on the road, sometimes I have to go on business trips, and wouldn't that be fun if you're like, oh, I'm in South Dakota, but I'm going to run a game, and you can run it through your tablet. That would be kind of cool.
Well, in Fantasy Grounds, I believe you can do like a monthly membership instead of forking out. Like there's the $150 for the ultimate GM experience, or you can pay $10 a month.
Okay. Huh. That'll be interesting to see how things shake out with that kind of competition, if Roll20 is going to step up their game and what they're going to offer too, because that's the one thing I do like about capitalism is that when you have different options, people are kind of forced to step up their game to give that value to make their product worthwhile to people's perceptions as something that they should use to do what they want to do.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Well, we're going to segue right into things that you can add to your games, which would be a sound pack. I found this, and this is really interesting. I got this from Tabletop Gaming News, sorry. And it's Complete Pathfinder, Rise of the Runelords Soundpack, now available from Syrinscape. Syrinscape has the solution to making sure that you get a bit more out of your gaming experiences by filling your gaming area with appropriate music and sound effects. They now have released their Complete Pathfinder Rise of the Runelords sound pack over their website. Even if you're not running that campaign, the sounds are great for all manner of RPG sessions. Check out the upcoming issue of Ravage Magazine US as well. Ravage EIC Jared Miller gives us gave a review of Syrinscape's program and kind of went through some of his thoughts. Some of the things that they have available here of sounds: an enormous and very angry blue dragon, the Wendigo, an inhumanely tall tower. I would love to hear what an inhumanely tall tower sounds like.
I'm guessing it sounds a lot like the asteroid from Armageddon that growled while it moves through space.
I just think Foley artists getting work. So.
What's the difference in the sound of a tall tower and an inhumanely tall tower? I want to know. A semi-plane of fire, a huge animated chain. That would be interesting. And a number of other sounds.
I was hoping there's something there that would be ruddy mysterious.
I bet you that's an option. I'm willing to bet that. They include offerings of 6 sound packs that they created for Rise of the Runelords that are bundled together for $89.99. That's a 5% discount off of their cover price. You can also purchase them individually for $15.99 each as part of the Syrinscape's Pathfinder Sound Pack ongoing subscription for $6.50 a month. Whew. An ongoing subscription. So it's subscription-based. You can get discounts then, and they seem to offer, different. Oh, geez, some of the free downloads that they have. 2 fantasy sound sets with sounds such as Bugbear Battle, Witchwood, Flooded Cavern, Elven Vale, Lair of the Siren, and dozens more. See, I'm kind of wondering, and I want to take a quick look here and see if it is available on DriveThruRPG. I know that they do have a section for just ambiance for sounds, for things to add to games. And I am looking for where that would be. There we go. They've got product bundles aplenty, that's for sure. So how would you guys feel if you were playing a game with a group of, say, 5 to 6 people, and somebody whipped out their laptop or their tablet and started playing sounds? Now, I'm going to kind of give a sort of a caveat to that. Not at a booming level where you couldn't hear everybody else talk. How would you feel about having background ambient sounds while you were playing a game, no matter the genre?
I've actually played in a series of games where the game master often used audio effects.
Okay.
Not so much just like roars of monsters and stuff like that, but just like ambient sound. Like if we're out, if we're like on a river, he actually would have sounds of like running water constantly going. If we're in a cavern, you'd hear those, footsteps across cavern floors and the occasional drip of water and stuff like that. So we do a lot of ambient sound. And I thought it was pretty nifty. It was just, he just kind of had it programmed where he would just have to simply one touch of the mouse and the appropriate stuff would come up. So nice. I enjoyed it. I thought it added another level of immersion to the game.
Okay. Ian, how do you feel?
Well, I haven't had an ambient noise experience like that, but the last game that I just came off of, the GM was a music guy. And so our entire game had a soundtrack. And typically speaking, we were getting different background music and interstitials for different moods and segues. Like, this is a Shadowrun campaign, so it kind of, like, when the fight breaks out, you get some kind of hard-driving techno shit and kind of go.
Sure. Okay. Huh. Because I was looking at Drive-Thru RPG. They don't have the Syrinscape product. They do have other products from other folks. But Drive-Thru RPG, I think we've mentioned before, is like one of our go-to places to get digital versions of rule books and things like that. So it's always the first place I go when I check things out. That would be interesting to, and I want to, go back and actually run my Dirgewood campaign, which Wild West, and I was looking through Drive-Thru RPG, and they do have music and sounds that kind of go along with that that genre, and I wasn't sure how distracting that would be, but based on what you guys are saying here, that probably wouldn't be too bad if done properly and not too loud. Okay. So overall, we think thumbs up on doing something like that if executed
I think so.
properly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Personally, I prefer to do like the roaring and the yelling all on my own.
Yeah.
I could see that. Get a roll of player piano into your house if you're doing that particular genre. Or the possibilities.
Well, for the Wild West game, it would be essential. Arm garters for everybody.
Yes, arm garters and sarsaparillas for everyone. Absolutely. All right, that wraps up the paper versions of our RPG news. We have news from Galactic. We have Galactic Gaming news from Ryan Murphy, and he's one of our contributors to Galactic Netcasts, and he covers the digital beat of gaming, and he has another update for us. So take it away, Ryan. Okay, thanks for that report, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Next up, we're going to talk about the Kickstarter section here, the Kickstarter Spotlight. And we're going to go back and look at the last campaign that we spoke about, and that was Post-Human. Now, just as a refresher, and Ian, you might not have heard that episode or have seen Post-Human, but Post-Human is a board game, and it's like $52. And it takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, and you are a loner who is searching for the last remnants of humanity. You're looking for an outpost that people people, and you want to join up with them. But as you're traveling across this irradiated land, you can take damage from encounters and things like that, and the more damage you take, the more possibility that you have to become a mutant. And there are mutants that are roaming the countryside. And it was a really interesting concept. And at some point, you could be running with a party of people. I believe that they hit like so many of their goals. It's ridiculous. Just to kind of give you an idea, they ended up with 5,323 backers. This was successfully funded. They were looking for $27,000. That was their goal. They ended up with $346,071. So they blew through their stretch goals like nobody's business. And so that ended up you getting more abilities to play more characters. So I think that the game can now support up to 8 people.
Oh, wow.
I would have to look at that again. 6 to 8 people. Like cards aplenty. They had meeples, like the wooden representations of your characters as they travel over the board. Wow. Additional weapons. Yes.
Out of curiosity, like, has Mr. B Games had like other hits? Is it what accounts for the big backing? Was it purely driven by the theme or savvy marketing, or did they have other hits that people wanted to see them cash in on?
Actually, Glenn said that he had come across a Mr. B game. And what game was that just hit your store?
Oh my gosh, I'm completely forgetting now. I don't remember things more than a week out. Spurs.
Spurs, okay.
And Alien Uprising and Clockwork Kingdom. I actually have 3 at my store right now.
Okay. And checking out the Mr. B, it's MrBGames.com is where they have the listing of their current games that they have out. And they're teaming up with Mighty Box as well to put out Posthuman. And yeah, the people have spoken resoundingly, and looking through their stretch goals. I think when we spoke about this 2 weeks ago, they didn't have as many stretch goals available, and I think as they started blowing through them, they just started adding more and more and more. And wow, they actually added. Yeah, but they're going to be doing a companion app, a digital version of the character sheet for the game. I mean, that's how far they came. Gosh, so many upgrades to the look of the box, a new design for the character sheets from their original concept. Gosh, so many wonderful things that happened here. And I love doing the Kickstarter thing because it's fun to see these games that people want to put out because they've got a great idea, and to see people be successful with that is just so wonderful. So wonderful. Now, that was the one thing about this game that was really interesting, is to calculate the amount of time that this game takes, you think 30 minutes per person. So if you have 6 people playing, I think we said it before, you're in it for the long haul. You're going to be sitting down and playing this game for quite some time. But from the looks of this and from the outcrying and the response here, it's well worth it. Well worth it. So I'm glad that panned out. So we have a new one, Glenn, a new spotlight on a new game here for Kickstarter. And what is that game?
Well, it's not a game itself. It's a series of games. The Kickstarter it's the Titans of Gaming. Ray Wares, who is the man behind Calliope Games, who makes one of my little favorites, Suro, has gathered together some of the some big names in game design, and they are releasing 9 games over the next 3 years. These are gateway games. For those who aren't familiar with what a gateway game is, they're hobby games, but they're the type of game that you use to introduce people who haven't done the hobby gaming before. People who have played like Monopoly and Sorry and Trivial Pursuit. This is that step into the bigger world of games. If you've played like Ticket to Ride or even Settlers of Catan, I consider those to be the gateway type games before you get into the heavier, meatier stuff where you're going to have to worry about a lot more rules and more going on. Some of the names involved is just actually I'm going to go through all of them because they're all great. So there's Peggy Brown. She did Buzzword, Backseat Drawing, one of my favorite kind of abstract games, Qubits. You've got Rob, and I always butcher his last name. It's DeVow or something like that. But this is the guy who did Betrayal at House on the Hill, one of my all-time favorite games.
Oh, that's such a good game, yeah.
Mike Elliott, who did Quarriors.
Okay.
James Ernest, Kill After Lucky, Lord of the Flies, Keep-Ass games. Matt Forbeck, who did Monster Rancher and Marvel Heroes Dice Battle. Richard Garfield, Magic the Gathering, King of Tokyo. Seth Johnson, who brought us HeroClix. Eric Lang, who just also was on Quarriors, Marvel Dice Masters, XCOM the board game, which just came out. Mike Mulvihill, who's Battletech, Shadowrun, Golem Arcana, Mage Knight. Paul Peterson, who did Smash Up and Guillotine. Mike Selinger, Pathfinder card game. He also Betrayal at House on the Hill, Lords of Vegas. Jordan Weissman, Battletech, Shadowrun, HeroClix, Mech Warrior, Mage Knight. And Zach Wiseman was also on Golem Arcana and Gotham. I mean, just a ton of great names of people who are going to be working on these games. And they've got... So the first three that are coming out, there's going to be Zach and Jordan Wiseman are working on a worker placement game where you're going to be basically bidding to earn items and you're buying for prestige. Bluffing and deduction come into play as prices for needed items are driven up by competitors. You have to decide when to go after which items and which profit and when to profit off of the other players. Then Paul Peterson has one coming out, which is a risk management game where you have to maneuver dice from one side of the board to the other because moving them to locations of different values. You have event cards, which change the way things play, can help you or hinder you, and you navigate the board, risking your dice along the way to get victory points at the end. And then Richard Garfield it's how well can you link minds with your fellow players. It's a hilarious, thought-provoking party game that invites players to think as one when responding to queries. Players receive points for responding the same way as other players, regardless of whether the other players provide a correct response or not. Players with the fewest points receive strikes. Collect enough strikes and the game ends. So, just a lot of cool stuff coming out. Now, I mean, these are for those people who, if you've got your hardcore game group and you only play the big hefty games, you know, it's like if it doesn't take 9 hours and require an advanced degree in calculus, I don't want to play it. Well, these aren't going to be for you. But if you're like me, where I introduce a lot of people to games, I mean, partly because I just love playing games and sharing them, and also because I sell games for a living. And having those games that can introduce people to this bigger, broader world of so many things beyond the staples we grew up with, where it's, well, the mundanes grew up with, not us amazing people who had great games, but the mundanes who grew up with, Monopoly and stuff. It's hard getting them into these other games because you can't just grab someone and throw them down and say, all right, we're going to play Twilight Imperium. It's a 9-hour game that involves all the... It's not going to work.
That game.
And these are games that, they're going to play fast. They're going to be 30 minutes to an hour tops generally, so they can get a taste of these games and they can see if this is something that they want to delve more into.
I have a question for you, Glenn.
Yeah.
Just about this trend. I mean, like, you kind of alluded to it when we were kids. Like, I don't know, the hobby hasn't always been inclusive of lots of people. And I think about the old gaming shop model of folks who didn't necessarily have the most helpful customer service approach, but now I see, like, we got a new game store in my town that's all about, like, spreading the hobby out to families. You're talking about it. You guys do a bunch of, like, teaching in your store for kind of getting people in, and then we have this entire series. Like, why now?
I think a big part of it is the model had to change because of online.
Yeah.
What sets me apart from the online stores? If all I am is a place where you can come in, give me $30, and I give you a game, you may as well buy it online because odds are you'll get it 10% off or 20% off. But you come into my store, I've got 300 open games in our library that you can look through. You can rent a table and $3 you can sit there and play for 11 hours if you want. If you come in, we open until we close. You can play games for 11 hours, anything we have in the library. And on Sundays, it's free. and when we have time, we'll run you through games. And if you don't want to play games, I can tell you about most of the games on the shelf. And if I can't, I've got someone on staff who can. And it's the big thing we stress at my store is we don't sell games. We sell experiences.
Yeah.
Because most people who come in aren't looking for a specific game. Yeah, you get someone who wants Settlers of Catan or wants Betrayal at House Nil, but a lot of people come in because they're looking for something to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have years of experience where I can hopefully match these people with an experience I think they're going to enjoy. And you don't get that online. You can read about a game, and yeah, hardcore gamers, people who've been gaming a lot, they'll sit there and they'll watch a 30 or 40-minute YouTube video describing a game, and they'll read all the reviews. But for someone who if they've played Settlers of Catan and that's it, and they want to know what's next, they're not going to get that online because they're not going to have the patience to sift through all of the stuff on Board Game Geek and on YouTube. They can come to me and I can say, oh, you like Settlers of Catan? Well, here's 4 games that are similar but different enough we're going to get a better experience, and you can go from there.
Yeah, that's, I think Glenn's spot on there because you can get anything anywhere now online. For us here in Wausau, we do have a game shop here in town, and I've had hit and miss good experiences there. I am more willing to drive 30 minutes away to go to Galaxy because I know that when I walk in the door, somebody's going to come up to me and be interested and willing to answer my questions. That is worth the money that I spend in gas and the time that I spend driving because I could go to Barnes & Noble here and get games, but nobody there knows what the games are. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody who's knowledgeable, and that's going to set you apart. Thinking about doing this podcast, I'm always nervous about doing the news because you can find the news online anywhere. The thing that really kind of sets anything apart is having something unique, and that's talking to people that either are in the gaming industry or play the games a lot and picking that subject and talking about that. That's what makes it different, and that it applies to the retail world. Anything that you can do that sets you apart, that makes you better than the competition, people are going to be willing to spend that money for that experience and to walk away feeling good that they've spent maybe a little bit more, but they feel like they got their value for that money. So
no, that certainly holds true in my experiences in the market that I'm in, where we've got 3 different gaming shops, and I'm kind of watching the ones that haven't adapted to this. They're holding on to their old clientele, but they're not gaining new clientele.
Yeah.
And in just last week, we started a gaming collection in our library, and the game shop in town that's doing it right, I'm Bored in Madison.
Yep.
They actually have a 40% educator discount, and then worked with us on the collection development and how we wanted to get a cross section of games to represent. So, I mean, a fantastic experience, and we totally wouldn't have gotten it at the other shops in the market.
And that's always good because that places like that take the time are going to last longer. Anything that's true in business is attrition. You are going to lose people along the way. And it doesn't matter what your business, it could be cell phones. It could be anything. It's real and it exists for every market. And you cannot... Hell, it even applies to churches. You have to do the outreach. People are going to die, or people are going to move on to something else, or whatever. And you always have to be looking out for new people and giving service, giving value for that, so people feel good about being a part of something or spending money for something. And the shops that don't do that, I feel truly sorry for, because in 5-10 years, that attrition is going to bite them in the ass, and they're not going to be around anymore.
And it's a pretty contentious thing with some people. You have the old guard who are used to the the dimly lit, unorganized, unkempt, bad customer service in a lot of places. I'm not saying all older game stores are like that. I've been to some that have been around forever that are great, but there's that stereotype that exists, and it existed for a reason. Yeah. Of the place where you would not take your mother. You wouldn't even take your children, even if your kids were gamers, because there's a lot of them, it still has this clubhouse mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys who want to hang on to that, and they don't like stores like mine, because they can't come in and talk about, anything they want, and they can't drop F-bombs every other word. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not some prude who sits there and condemns everyone who swears, because when I'm not at work, I mean, I let them fly quite often. If anyone listens to me on some of my other podcasts or my video reviews, I'm not shy about the language. But there's a time and a place. And in a place where I've got 8 kids playing Pokemon, I don't want to hear you talking about some girl and what you did to her, because it's not appropriate for the situation. And they don't like that. They want to be able to just sit there and do what they've always done. And a lot of those places, they're drying up. And when the next pop happens to the magic bubble, because the magic bubble always grows and grows and grows, and they have something bad happen, and it shrinks back down, then it'll grow and grow again. When that shrinks back down again, there's a lot of stores are going to die just from that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a trade show I go to in 2 weeks, ACD's open house. ACD is one of the bigger distributors, and they're right in Madison. And there's a lot of stores there. I talk to people, and some of these stores, Magic is like 70-80% of their sales. And I don't remember what our percent is, but it's in the teens, I think.
Mm.
See,
and for us, that's even too high.
Okay.
We want it to be a small, because if you got something that's 15% of your business, and all of a sudden, boom, that cuts in a third, it's a huge chunk of your money gone.
Yeah.
And a lot of product then you're just sitting on too. So, like you said, 10, 15 years, a lot of those places are going to be gone, because they don't want to adapt. They don't want to change. They want to do it the way they've always done it.
Yeah. And back when I was managing the comic shop in La Crosse, it was always looked at as we had the card games, we had the comics, and we had the sports cards. And each sort of fell into, well, we had darts and some other things too. But like the core pieces almost accounted for a third of the business. But the nice thing about the things that we chose is usually if something dropped down, something else picked up. So you had a little bit of that back and forth. But if you're talking 70%, and everything goes in cycles, it's going to happen. And if you don't believe it's going to happen, you're a fool. So you need to make sure, seriously, if you are a serious business person, you're a fool to have your eggs in that basket, because it's going to disappear. The bottom's going to drop out of that basket, and you're going to have 0 eggs, and you're going to be screwed.
Well, and there are people who own game stores. They refuse to carry games like Monopoly and Sorry and stuff like that.
Oh, the old gamer elitism.
And I forget his name, but the guy who runs I'm Bored, I saw him give a seminar last year, and he goes, "You carry those games because people ask for them.
Yeah.
People remember them, and people want them." And I personally, I hate Monopoly. I loathe playing it. I pitch it all the time because there's a lot of people who like it. That's the thing, is that not everyone will like the same stuff. I sell probably at least one form of Monopoly every day, if not more.
Okay.
And it's stupid to not carry something that people want. If it fits in your market. Obviously, I'm not going to carry, Crocs, because one, they're stupid, and two, they have no place in my store. But
has there been a comedic gamer hipster send up yet? Because that needs to happen.
Actually, there was just something online. The Settlers of Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
The Settlers of Brooklyn. And it's all about gentrifying the neighborhood. And all that type of stuff.
I want to trade 2 coffees for I think Crocs might have been one of the resources. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes. It's always interesting when we get on subjects like this, and then we talk about running a business here next on Business Talk. But no, but I think that's good to. people wonder why things are the way they are. You know, I'm willing to bet $5 that you carry cribbage boards in your store.
Oh gosh, I have like 11 different cribbage boards.
And I remember working at the comic shop, and we carried games, and people asked all the time. You know, you get people that, I need a cribbage board, and we'd be like, here you go. And you get younger people come in, why do you have cribbage boards? You don't understand, you know. People come looking for things, and as long as it fits in what you do, you carry that, because that's the gateway drug. You know, if they come in and they have a good experience and they see that you have other things, they'll talk about it to other people. I mean, that word of mouth will make or break you. And running a clubhouse,
Wisconsin, you have cribbage.
Yeah, cribbage, sheephead, you know, all of that. But I mean, that'll make or break you. So you need to be on that. And yeah, when that bubble bursts, you need to be able to batten down the hatches and withstand that. So there you go. All right. Well, next we're going to talk with Ian about the natures of morals and heroism and group comfort in RPGs. Going back to the beginning when we started, we talked about running that time cop game where you have to save Hitler. Now, is everybody going to be on board with that? Hopefully, if you've been working with that group long enough that you know that you can propose something like that, and people are going to be comfortable with that. You know, some people might not be. But in that, being able to explore morals, being able to explore heroism, at what point, I think Rob asked the question, at what point are you being true to your character? If you're playing a thief in the party and you open up that chest and you come back to everybody and go, oh yeah, there was just this emerald in there, and meanwhile you've got a small bag of 10 platinum pieces, at what point are you playing your character, and at what point are you being a dick and not helping out the party? At what point are you not being the hero that you're supposed to be in the game, playing your alignment, and at what point are you just stabbing people in the back? And how do you keep that group together when people are not necessarily being heroic and just kind of being jerks? Being able to explore certain concepts, having people be comfortable with it, and having everybody on board at the same level and playing it. So, that kind of starts us off on the first question. If you're in a campaign, at what point is it okay to kill villains of a particular genre? Now, like Rob and I in our Monday night game, I think we're second level characters now, and we're running afoul of kobolds. And we need to kill kobolds, but a lot of us are lawful good characters. When is that okay to kill certain creatures and not? What do you guys think? Where do you draw the line?
Well, in that particular context, I think that not only the genre says a lot about what's okay to be adversarial towards, to kill, but also the inherent rules. Now, I would ask you, do those kobolds show up in a book that is called Monster Manual?
Yes, they do.
Do those kobolds have an experience value tied to their deaths? Yeah.
Yes, they do.
And is not the goal of all character advancement in Dungeons and Dragons is to accumulate more experience? You have a rules structure that has incentivized them, and I bet that further, if you looked in said monster manual, you would find an alignment next to those kobolds that is signaling that they are an evil creature. So you have these different axes that particular rules structure has set up to really give you a lot of cues that they are an okay thing to kill. Now, I think that your GM can always run counter to whatever the structure of a system says, and like a good game doesn't paint with such broad brushstrokes. But I'm really interested in sort of this subtext of what the rules say about what your genre or system says is okay to kill.
Okay. the interesting thing, and I want to pitch this out here too, is in our villains campaign where we are playing villains. We are the bad guys, and our job is to draw the world down into serving a demon god.
Yeah.
That is our job, and it's been an interesting transition, and I am getting back to heroism here because we're playing anti-heroes. We are playing the people that are trying. Well, we're not even anti-heroes, I guess. In that case, we're just
villains.
Well, yeah, we're just villains, and I think there are some folks that are playing the game that are having a hard time adjusting to that because they're used to playing the heroic role, and we're getting experience to do the opposite, to kill good, to destroy good. But is okay. Let's spin it this way. Kobolds are, I can't remember, they're an evil alignment. But if you're a lawful good cleric, do you want to forgive them, to try to turn them? I mean, no,
it's kobold colonialism. You want to go in and give them all books of Paladine or whatever, and be like, come to the light.
You want to do that, but I think there's also part of you wants to give them some blankets.
Oh, and there it is.
Oh,
yeah.
That's
the thing is that I think when people look at the alignments and the way they play them, there's things that I think good people justify in their goodness that someone from the outside looking in would go, that's really not that good. Because a lawful good person can simply say, killing off these chaotic evil creatures, that's a good thing, because they are the incarnation of evil.
Okay,
But
so
someone on the outside could say, but they were hanging out in their caves and you went in there and killed them. I mean, it doesn't matter how evil they are if they're just in those caves. Just don't send your kids over to that cave, and it'll be fine. So someone on the outside can look in and say that's evil. I mean, it's if you take the thing is a lot of its context.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at like World War II when we bombed the hell out of Berlin, someone who would have no context, all they saw was U.S. bombers leveling city blocks. They'd go, what evil group of people would do such a thing? Because there's all that context is removed.
Yeah.
I think that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I think that the context is a little bit provided by the rule system in this case, and like the genre. But I also, man, I love it when that gets set aside. I hate for the game that I'm playing or running to tie my hands about what I'm allowed to do.
Yeah.
Like you talked with Rob about him being a min-maxer.
Yep.
I'm a rule breaker. I love to kind of take note of, oh yes, that's exactly what the rules say we're supposed to do, and then ignore it completely and do something that is kind of better for the dynamic or story that I want to do.
Sure.
So I'm really fascinated by what rules tell us about how the game is supposed to run, not so that I can lawyer them or force them to be there, but more so that I can try and break them artfully.
Okay.
It's kind of, in ways I'm the same thing, where I'm of the, in a lot of games I am of the belief that it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yep.
Yeah, you're one of those people.
If you can't min-max, that's the way you do it.
Yeah. I've always been one where running the game to me and watching people, I'm a people watcher by nature, so it's always interesting when I have, when I handed people character sheets for Dirgewood and said, okay, we're in a Wild West setting, post-Civil War, make your sheets. Do what you think you're going to do for this character and dream that up. And to me, it was never about the rules. It was about what are people going to show me about themselves, or what do they want to explore by the character that they're making. And yeah, I can see, if you're running a game, ultimately the story, and we've talked about this before, the story supersedes the rules. The rules are there as a backstop and to try to give context and keep everybody on the same page, but at the end of the day, you are all trying to tell a story together. You have one person that's giving you the scenarios and the things for you to work through and work out and to either succeed or fail at, and giving people, you're either giving people rope to hang themselves with or rope to do something else very useful with. So it was always, for me, it was about having people make their characters who they're going to be in that world and see how making that group work together.
So
go ahead.
Just to like push back on the statement a tiny bit, because I love to devil's advocate, the idea that everything is about the story. I've also seen games fall apart because a lot of the players were there because they wanted it to be about the rules and the tactics. So doing a Shadowrun campaign, and in Shadowrun, we talk about the rules cues for what and who and how you kill. Consider now we have a whole different game that doesn't have an alignment or morality rules mechanic, but it does have a rule book called the Canon Companion that is 100 and some odd pages of nothing but different kinds of guns. It implies strongly that a major portion of the game should be about tactically kitting your character out to shoot people with guns or magic or whatever your preferred type of like killing stuff is. And now in a game where somebody wants to take a light hand and try and run that really story heavy and be loose, and you've got a couple people at the table who really want to get into how did I build my car and how do my drone racks work and what are the mods on my combat shotgun, man, those people will get super pissed off if the GM's like saying, yeah, that's all there, and I know that you bought 3 supplements full of that information, but I want to tell the story about this. And I've seen that split a game in half and people walk away from the table.
Okay. Yeah, and I can see that too. And I think as you put a gaming group together, I think that it might be the job of the storyteller or the person that's running the game to say, okay, and I think we spoke about that with Todd about Todd Roll, and Todd Roll is a hell, and of course, other people listening to this probably have no idea who he is.
I hope you build him up every episode, and then like 50 in, you actually get him on the show, and he can be all sagacious.
I want to have Todd on the show in the worst way possible, but I do. I want to build a myth. I want to build a legend, and have him show up. I really want to have that happen. And for the people that have just heard stories about Todd, Todd is an amazing person where he, it's about the story, but he can feel out each individual person. And we were talking about how your sister-in-law could give a damn about the rules. She doesn't even care how many dice she has to throw. It's about the story. And there are other people that, and Rob conversely is a person like, I want to have a bucket of dice to blow things up, and trying to be that storyteller that can balance everything out to give people the type of story that they want to have, and to bring that back to our subject, being able to feel everybody out in the group and know the things that they're looking for, whether it is rules and structure or if it's story. And I think partially, it's the storyteller's responsibility to put together a group that is kind of relatively on the same page, where there is wiggle room to be able to do that, so that there aren't the conflicts that split a group apart. But I think also it's the job of the storyteller, if he's chosen a group of people, or these people have chosen each other to do stories, that everybody kind of gives each other the leeway of, okay, now we're doing this, and that's going to happen. Maybe I'm not 100% down with that, but I know I'm going to get my opportunity to do the thing that I like because I trust that storyteller to come back to it.
And I agree so much with what you said there. I think one of the strengths is giving everybody, or that Todd is especially good at, is giving people the spotlight.
Yeah.
He wants his players to be big damn heroes, whatever the genre is. To say big damn heroes is wrong, because again, as we're talking about heroics implies a specific thing.
Yeah.
So rather than saying heroics, he wants everybody to have a chance, and I've learned this and try to kind of run with it too, to have their genre moment, to like have their moment in the sun that defines their character as that character is situated inside that genre. And in order for that to happen, sometimes everybody else at the table just has to have a little suspension of disbelief and let that moment happen. And you'd think that that would be easy since you're all sitting around the table sharing a fantasy world. But I agree. Like sometimes it's really hard for people to have a little suspension of disbelief, whether that means setting down a rule or letting the story just sit for a second so that somebody can have their moment in the sun with their Panther Assault cannon. Like
yeah, and I think even Rob was saying that, Todd even kind of comes out and says, hey, at a certain point, this game is going to be cinematic. Something's going to happen that, you're going to get knocked out by somebody and taken somewhere. And that's not anything against you. That's not necessarily anything against how you're playing. It's not me saying that you're doing it wrong. It's just me saying there are things that we're looking to cover here, and something's going to happen that, we're going to supersede some of the rules on this to get us to where we need to be to tell the story that I think the group should be working through. And that's not necessarily, there's no malice in that. There's no heavy-handedness to it, but he knows that the people that he's playing with are looking for a thing from the game. And whether that's the story, whether that's something in the rules, whether that's getting you to that bad guy that you've always wanted to fight, to go toe-to-toe with, you have to trust that person that is telling the game that they are tuned into who you are as a gamer and give you the things that you're looking for, because ultimately, just like we were talking about business, you need to feel out the people that are coming into you to get the thing that they want. And in this case, it's the game. In this case, it's you getting the thing out of the story that you enjoy. The reason why you role play. You need to be able to go somewhere and be able to trust that the people that are there are going to help you achieve and get that thing that you're looking for. And it's not just limited to business. It's not just limited to gaming. It's very related. You need to be able to trust that that person is going to give you the thing that you are looking for.
Yeah.
So
to take a dip back into the what's it okay to kill in what different games, I'm kind of curious. As I was thinking about today's theme, I was actually making a list of different game systems and how I thought about their incentivization or lack of incentivization to set up villains.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about White Wolf, of course, which, you're the monster and we have a morality system that makes you the monster. And then I was thinking, when was the last time you played in a vampire game where you weren't just a superhero that happened to be a vampire and you were actually having somebody hit you with morality mechanics? And the superheroic game and systems like Hero, where there isn't a morality system, the universal systems they tend to be all what do you need for combat and none of this genre trapping, because a morality system is totally a genre trapping. And of course you get Call of Cthulhu where sanity kind of becomes a morality.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can I love that one because I was thinking how do you tell if something is supposed to be killed? If it gives you a sanity hit, it's fair game.
Yes. And maybe it's not even so much dependent on. Gosh, we were talking about in D&D, if something has an alignment that's against you, if it's opposite of you, it obviously needs to be killed. When it comes to a morality mechanic or morality that you put into a game, I think ultimately those are stories that you can pursue. When it comes to Vampire, it should have been not so much that you're a superhero that is undead. I played games like that where it's like, oh, and you can jump over a building, just spend the blood points, It should have also have been an exploration of you trying to reconcile the fact that you need to feed off of living people to continue to survive. How do you justify that? Mm-hmm. That if there's no morality mechanic built into the game, that is something that you can easily start to role play and inject it into the game. So I guess maybe it depends on the storyteller and how much they want to draw attention to the morality portion of it or the heroism of something.
I like consequences in games.
Yes.
I think that just having the morality of a game be something that's written on your character sheet is a little bit. It's one way of doing it, but it doesn't actually make that impact hit what the characters are doing. I love to see a character's bad decisions come back and haunt them, or a character's selfish decisions, etc., etc. And I think that that's done really skillfully when there's actually no morality judgment attached to it at all. Like neither a rule system nor your GM is like looking down their nose and waving a scolding finger at you. You just get to kind of realize for yourself how your actions have affected like how the rest of the party is dealing with you and how the GM is deciding to have NPCs deal with you. Yeah.
No, Glenn, what are you? Is that how you like? If you run a game, do you make sure that people get, they have to deal with the decisions that they make?
Oh, absolutely. And one of my biggest tools for that is other people in the party.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get the other players mad at someone, it can make it generally, unless the person is completely oblivious or just a dick, they'll change your tune. I mean, I had one where it was dealing with a min-maxer, and I generally do pretty well dealing with min-maxers, and it was someone who they were tough enough that anything I threw at the group, they could pretty much handle.
Mm-hmm.
If I threw something tougher, anyone else would get killed. And I eventually got them in a situation where the guy he just wouldn't be intimidated. It's like, whatever, you can beat me up, that's fine. And I had the main NPC go, oh, I'm not going to do anything to you. And then proceeded to beat the snot out of the other characters while he stood there and watched, because he was in a cell, so he can't do anything to get out of that. But he had to. Yeah. So every smart comment he made, someone else got hurt. And he finally changed his tune when I cut off all the mage's fingers. on the eighth finger, he finally shut up.
Wow.
So and it's the fact that that anger carried over for like 3 sessions, where when they got out of there, he was the black sheep of the group for a while, because it was you did this stuff, and yeah, you can back it up when you're able to, but you're not the only person in this group. And I know I played in a vampire game where it was very much you were always walking on eggshells, because the guy who ran it, the masquerade, the prince of the city we were in, I mean, that was, I think someone may have seen you leave your house and you were wearing a cape that made you look kind of like a vampire, so therefore it's a violation of the masquerade, we're going to have to kill you now. I mean, that guy he was so protective of the masquerade that you had to be careful with every decision you made was life or death practically when it came to doing anything other than just like walking down a street, because you had to make sure that you did nothing to give anything away, and a lot of that played on the fact that you couldn't just become this raging monster who could do whatever he wanted to. You can't just go into a bar and start beating people up because you're a gangrel and you can beat the snot out of people like it's nothing. That looks suspicious.
Yeah.
And then when the sheriff comes after you, well, guess what? You're 13th generation. You're nothing.
Yeah. And yeah, I
gotta like call out. So another side of this, like making players enforce sort of what the players construct the morality at the table. I mean, we're constructing a world together, so ultimately what happens is the GM and the players, regardless of what system you're in and what cues the system is giving you, are constructing the expectation of morality. So I got to call out Dale Newby here, your brother-in-law. He is very, very good at getting that to work. We were doing a game, and it was the New World of Darkness, which haters gonna hate, but I love the New World of Darkness. And I decided I was gonna do a character that was used to be a hero and now has gone over hero into being a little bit of a megalomaniac and a little bit of a monster.
Okay.
And I will tell you what, that gaming group, led by Dale, and Dale setting the tone, those people made me feel bad about myself a couple times. And it wasn't physical violence. It wasn't even that I lost. Like, because if this character's a megalomaniac, I try not to think about role-playing as winning, but part of this character's thing is winning. Like, you win everything. And I won. Like, I won and won and won and won. And man, oh man, every time I walked away from that gaming table, I felt like a horrible bastard. And that's all on the strength of those other people around the table reacting to the stuff that I was doing and Dale's reinforcement of it. Like, just like, you got what you wanted. Are you proud of yourself? Well,
yeah. Yeah. There's a thing at when you treat everything like you can either win or you can lose. I guess that's a great dynamic. That's when you know that you have a great group of people at the table because everybody is in tune with what's going on. And when you are the jackass at the table and that's the character that you're playing, and everybody, without like doing any form of shaming, without doing anything, calling you out, just by the very reactions that they have to your character's decisions and how they go about doing things can actually affect you as a person. I'm not even talking about your character, because your character probably doesn't even really care. I mean, if he's that way, he doesn't care. He won the thing. And that's the important thing. For you as a person to feel for one, I salute you for playing a character like that. Is very difficult to play something that is like 100% not you, and to hold that character and to keep playing it. That is a difficult thing.
Thank you for thinking so well of me.
No, it is a difficult thing to do. I think a lot of people will play a portion of themselves in a game. They want to explore a part of their personality maybe that they pull out every once in a while. I know you. I know that you're not a megalomaniac, and I know that you don't really like to win at everything. That's not necessarily you, but to be able to play and hold that is a wonderful thing, and that means that you're an awesome role player. And to be surrounded with people that are at that level, and to have you walk away from that and take something away from it as a person, as a lesson, that you have put on this character, you played it, and now you feel bad as a person because you actually can see from a distance what you've reaped from those decisions that character has made. I think that's a wonderful thing, and that's what role-playing should most definitely be.
That's what I want.
Now, speaking of that, are there any things that are really taboo in games? We were I keep going back. I keep God-winning the podcast here. With that example of time cops having to save Hitler. Are there subjects that are taboo inherently, or is that determined by the group that is playing the game?
Well, I think that it's determined by the group who's playing the game. But I also think that it's too simple to stop at that, because there's a really damning phrase, and we've said it a couple times, and that phrase is, "It's what my character would do."
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to get people at a table who say, "It's what my character would do," in the midst of doing something that's really, really awful, that's racist, or that's hate speech, or that's something that's really inappropriate, kind of in any context.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be that. It could be like, well, hell with your plot. I'm going to murder the NPC who is supposed to be our buddy, because it's what my character would do.
Yeah.
And to that I say, like, suspension of disbelief. Like, you don't get to use "it's what my character would do" as an excuse.
It should never be used as a dodge.
Yeah.
If you just want to be a jackass running through the world doing whatever you want, it should never be "that's what my character should do." It should never be that simple.
Yeah.
And if you're a storyteller running that game, that's when you put the hammer down on them. Okay, if that's what your character is going to do, now I'm going to show you what that character gets as a reward for that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even tell you how angry I would be as a storyteller and how hard of a hammer I would drop on that person. Glenn, have you been in a game where somebody's just thrown, that's what my character would do?
Oh, I have. I have lots of times. Now, and the thing is there are times when some people get frustrated by a player doing what their character would do because it's not what they themselves would do. And then that comes up, well, I'm playing my character. And there is that fine line between role-playing and using that role as an excuse to do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes down to consequences. In a lot of games I've run where, it's if you do something bad, great. Something bad's going to happen. We had one where the players didn't want to pay for something, so they stole it. And in their fleeing, killed one of the city guard. So, it was probably 5 game sessions later, were back in that same town again, and it's people didn't remember him because not many people saw them when they were there. And it was a bigger city, and they were going through an alley, and they found someone who was hiding something over to the side, and they go over there and they find a dead child, emaciated, dead-looking child, and then of course they're caught with that dead child, and as the story unfolds, that child died on the street because the players killed the kid's father earlier. So when I finally dropped that bomb on them, that this kid's dad was killed. He was a city guard. He was killed with these thieves made off of this stuff, and I just saw every face in the group all of a sudden just go, "Oh fuck!" And they realized that here they're the heroes, in their minds, but at that moment none of them felt heroic.
Yeah.
Because now they've got this dead kid on, that pretty much they're responsible for this kid dying.
No.
And I threw that at them, and it was at a time that was very much the guy who killed the guard. He was an assassin, and he's just like that's what I do, and I'm like,
ooh,
that's not necessarily what you do. I mean, there are a lot of people who can. There's different ways you can play an assassin. I mean, and yes, there are assassins that just simply are evil and will kill anyone. But you've got things like, you have a lot of examples in stories and in films and in books of assassins who have codes. And one that always comes to mind is like Leon, the professional.
Yeah.
And you've always got guys like no kids, no women, no this, no that. I only kill mobsters, whatever. And this person, they were, I don't remember what their alignment was, but they weren't chaotic evil. And just when you can get past someone with just punching them, or you can use your poison dagger. The poison dagger is kind of the evil choice.
Yeah.
And you can't just say I'm playing my character. I'm like, you're not necessarily playing your character.
Okay, let me interrupt just for a second.
Yeah.
It's related to this. Mm-hmm. Would you, at that point, after you've done the reveal that you're responsible for this child being dead because you made a horrible choice, do you at that point have the conversation? Because if you're playing a system where there is a morality mechanic, do you make them change their alignment? Or do you have a moment where you give them the choice?
I give them the choice very often.
Okay, I agree with choice. Yeah.
In that situation, the actual guy who did the killing was probably the least remorseful. He was a little bit remorseful, but the rest of the group, the cleric, actually didn't play in the next session.
Oh wow!
And it wasn't because they had something going on. They said, "I'm going to settle the next session because my character is heading back to his monastery to atone."
Wow!
Because while he himself did not kill that guard, he didn't stop it either.
Yeah.
But that's the guy who didn't take the morality hit because he feels remorse. It's the people who don't feel remorse that are on deck for the morality mechanic, ideally, of whatever system.
Yes,
sure.
But then that carried over that group where now it came when the assassin would try to be an assassin and just be like, well, I can just kill people because I'm an assassin. The rest of the group kind of would give him a nudge, and he'd be like, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't You know, I shouldn't kill the mayor just because. You know, and and I know that there are people out there who just simply they've got players who just run roughshod over everything and kill everyone that's in their path.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who like that style of play, and you know, fine. But I like the fact that there are consequences for actions. And I've run games where the players are the bad guys.
Yeah.
But they still have to monitor themselves because you see, like in some movies and stuff, where you've got these, you know, some psychopathic boss who just all the time kills his own guys. I'm like, you know, at some point, someone's going to cap him. Why would you work for someone who, oh yeah, I screwed up once, now I'm dead? Why would you work for someone like after he kills like your 15th buddy?
Yeah.
You know, dude, it's like at some point, you know, it's like the boss wants to see you in his office. I'm just walking in there with freaking grenades in my hands and just going, "You're going down with me!" Boom. You know, and those types of people can't really exist for long. They'll always have a downfall.
So along these lines, and thinking about like how dark is too dark, and how players come to the realization that where they've gone is a dark place, or perhaps a darker place than they wanted to, it makes me think of along the subject that Glenn was kind of getting at with effectively the rules say I can. I'm doing it because the rules say I can. If you're an assassin, you know, all of your really awesome build stuff is to murder people. So to take this to, like, to turn it up to 11, I played in a con game that a friend of mine ran back in, like, 1999, 2000, and it was a Fomori game. So White Wolf Fomori, where, like, it's the Pentex arc, it's your powers are based on corruption. The more horrible things you do, the more awesome your powers get, and you get into a feedback loop of doing terrible things to, like, get more cookies. And so you get this really great feedback bump of like, I got more cookies, I just have to do more terrible things. And this game was really, really savage. And like when it was done, I kind of had a panic attack. Like it's the only gaming experience where I like had to excuse myself and be done, and I didn't want to like do anymore, and like I didn't really want to look the people in the table in the eye. And what was going on there was not that the GM was glorifying it, because he wasn't. It was the rules say you can, so I'm going to let you do it, and let's see how you feel when you're done doing it, and let everybody. Just beautifully, he just gave opportunity after opportunity after opportunity for horrible things to happen. And since that's what got us cookies, that's what the rules said made us better, we kept doing it. Until we all, at our own points in the storyline, came to these realizations and decided that we didn't want to do this anymore and had to, like, leave. And again, I think it was a brilliant game, not because it glorified these horrible acts, but because the trajectory of it started you off reveling in all of the destruction and terrible things that you could do to people, and then at a certain point it just wraps around to being like gross.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really, really skillful use of an intensely dark genre that people were expecting to play. Just like vampire superhero, yeah, there's a morality path. That was a really great integration of like, okay, y'all think you're like hardcore? Well, your GM's a little bit more hardcore than you are. You want to go dark? We'll go dark, and we're just gonna keep going dark until you don't want to stare into that void anymore. And that was phenomenal, and I'll never play it again.
Yeah. No, when you're dealing, and I don't know if folks are listening to this and going, Fomori, what? It's White Wolf, and it is actually they're a part of the werewolf mythos, and they are people who have been infected by the worm. They have been infected by chaos, corruption, entropy, the forces that wish to do away with life, with nature. And it is, I mean, the supplement book, and I've bought it. It was done by White Wolf, but through another imprint.
Black Dog Games.
Black Dog Games. And if you bought that, It was sealed in a black plastic wrapper because the imagery inside was pretty disturbing and not pornographic, but you're dealing with people who are corrupted by excess, by evil, and the things that it does to the physical form that were illustrated in there were pretty disturbing. And it's an interesting mechanic, and it is dark. It's tremendously dark, and its purpose for the Fomori are there to sow the seeds of destruction, to tempt people. They're like devils. I mean, for the lack of a better term, if you're going to equate them to something, they offer you something in exchange for something else. So yeah, you can have some kind of power, some kind of ability, and it's gross, and and in time it's going to pervert and destroy you. And your job is to continue that corruption with other people. And yeah, I could see that getting tremendously dark.
Yeah, it was really flawlessly executed in terms of this idea of how is morality constructed at a table, and because people realized that they had constructed a morality that they didn't want. And I thought that was a very powerful gaming experience.
I could see that being somebody's thesis. Really, I mean, in whether it's a sociology thesis or something about the mechanics of a group of people coming up with a set of societal rules, and to actually track that.
It's the Berkeley prison study.
Okay.
Like the famous 70s psychology experiment of the Berkeley prison study, where they said, okay, you undergraduate students are guards, and you undergraduate students are inmates.
Yes.
And then they put the guards in charge of the prison, and gave them no rules except to keep the prisoners in line, and how quickly that devolved into people taking their roles and abusing their roles, because there was somebody with a PhD leading a research study, and that person said, it's okay, it's a research study, you have this power and nothing bad is going to happen. But it was causing breaks, like psychological breaks in the students who were prisoners after a few days of this extreme isolation. And even in the end of that story, you get the psychologist who's running the experiment has to be intervened on by his girlfriend, who rolls in on him and says, so what are you doing? And he describes the experiment, and she goes, you're fucked. Like, what are you, you have to stop this. Like, stop this or we're done. You're screwed up. And that was the thing that snaps him out and goes, oh, I'm actually part of this rule system that I've created that justifies a behavior, and I have this wake-up moment. And so I think that there's a lot of places in gaming for that to happen, because you have rule structures that justify certain behaviors because they have, there tends to be violence. So much of the rule structure of a role-playing game is about conflict resolution, as it needs to be, because that's when just the role-playing won't get done. You got to roll some dice. You got to figure it out. But when that takes the center stage, you have a conflict resolution center thing that implies that it's okay. And the more the game has built in supplement after supplement after supplement to deepen the ways with which those combats and those physical encounters can happen, the more room there is for that game to be implying to you that violence is okay. And now I'm really, really like on my academic horse, but at the same time, like, I love me some violence. Like, righteous violence is my thing. Like, I get like a crazy rush from righteous violence. I love superhero games. I like to run them and I like to play them because violence is okay. Because it's like that's the whole thing, and that's so tied up in what it is to be a freaking American. Like, the cultural myth and story of righteous violence, and how, like, you look out and you protect the little guy, and you're goddamn Spider-Man, and like,
well, I can spend all day shooting Nazis.
Yeah,
all day.
Yep.
They're the only people you can kill in a Golden Age superhero campaign.
Yes. No, seriously. No, you're right. Because if you look at that genre, that time period, it's really the only thing, that, and, probably some of the Italians, some of the Italian forces. I mean, all those that were allied with the Axis were fair game.
Mm-hmm.
More the Nazis than anybody else, but yeah. And that was okay.
Mm-hmm. But then when you kick that up to Silver Age, like, you can kill people, but it's going to be a huge plot pivot. Like, people can die, but it's a big deal. And then you get to Frank Miller, and if you're not killing everybody, something's wrong. But throughout that entire continuum, there's the idea of righteous violence. It's just about what does righteous mean.
Yeah.
Well, there's a thing I've used in games too when players want to be bad, and that is when you're bad, you're going to hang around with bad people.
Ooh, yeah.
And there's a really good chance that as bad as you are, there's someone worse.
Yes. Just when you think you're the biggest shark in the pond, you're not.
Yep. You know, you might be an assassin who's killed people. That guy over there, he's wearing a suit out of the skin of the people he's killed. You know, and you got stuff like that. You know, you're going to run into people who are worse than you, and that also it sometimes can give people that mirror of that where they're headed, because sometimes you don't see past the bad thing you're doing, and you don't see that, man, did that guy start out like this?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you can kind of put them along that way, on top of the fact that they've got to now watch themselves, because if you're surrounded with lawful good people, the worst they're going to do is say, are you looking at middle-aged porn again? You know, it's like they're just going to wag their finger at you and give you a lecture is the worst that's going to happen. You might have to, you know, kneel on some pencils or something. If you're around, you know, the scum of the earth, dude, you better have a good lock on your door when you go to bed at night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because, hey, you know, I saw you had something I want, and now I want it. Or, you know, you got a pretty mouth. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Make you squeal like a pig.
So I guess really the kind of the consensus I think that we've sort of come to is a few things. One, the moral mechanic is either in the system or is created by the group. I think, is that what we're saying here?
I do think that it exists both places, and that the strength of where it exists shifts from table to table, game to game.
Yes. And for what is acceptable and not acceptable is really partly, and maybe more so, the responsibility of the storyteller, the leader of the game, and finding out what people are willing to explore and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I think that there's one more little variant, and that is morality by contrast. Because you talked about the example of the villain game.
Sure. Yeah.
And the Fomori game, for that matter. Because, you know, the bad guy game doesn't always go to the place of like, oh, we're not going to do this anymore. Sometimes the bad guy game is super fun. Like, you can be morally bankrupt and have an awesome time, and it can be okay. Because I really don't want to, like, again, moralize at people. Like, I don't get to be the judge of your gaming experience.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason that works is because you set up, there's the agreement at the table where everybody's like, okay, we're going to be bad guys.
Yeah.
And the world is a place for bad guys. And that the problem there arises when only one person has decided to be a bad guy and everything around them is set up to be good guys. So then you get, I guess, the more high contrast the bad guy versus good guy dynamic is, the more disruptive, or if you're doing it the right way, potent the effect can have on the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I will lay this experience out to you. In the villains game, Rob and I are playing magic users, for lack of a better term, but we're variant flavors in Pathfinder. I'm a witch, and I can't remember what Rob is playing. But my alignment was neutral evil, and everybody else was lawful evil. And we had a moment where we went into the library of a very powerful wizard, And Rob and I looked at everybody else in the group, and they're like, okay, we're looking for a thing. Don't touch the things in here. We'll tell you what is safe to touch and what is not safe to touch. And we will get this figured. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we need to do that, or something bad is most likely going to happen. And somebody went, I'm going to just start tearing stuff up. And all of a sudden, ghosts started showing up. And in D&D Pathfinder, a ghost will drain levels from you. A ghost will drain your constitution until you are dead. And at that point, when the ghosts started coming, and everybody's like, okay, you know, we got to fight the ghosts. I didn't have a magic weapon. And we weren't in a situation where I was going to be able to sleep to get my power back. And I turned around and I looked at the guy that did it, that started it. I went, screw you. We told you, and I am leaving. And I looked at the John Malik, who was running the game, and I said, I turn and I walk out of the room. And John looks at me, he says, there's a ghost right in front of you. And I said, fuck it, I'm walking through it. I don't care. And I walked away. And everybody at that moment, not everybody had good magic weapons. I had some abilities that probably could have dealt with some of that stuff, but at that point, and that's what my character would do, but I was able to justify it. You know, I was able to justify it. It wasn't that I was going to be a dick. It's, we told you that a bad thing was going to happen. We have limited resources. Now the bad thing has happened, and I morally can walk away from this. I have no responsibility to you. My responsibility is done because I have followed my code, and I can walk away with a clean. I don't feel bad about it. I can't feel bad about it because I told you this was going to happen, and it did. I got to do a little bit of I told you so, and it felt kind of good. I personally would have felt bad if somebody would have died from that decision, but as the character, I had to, you know, that I told you that was going to happen, and it happened, and I walked away. So I think in that regard, I think that you can say that's what my character would do, as long as you can justify it in a means that's not just, well, that's what I feel. There is a full-on logical progression, a thought that has gone into it as to why you can do the thing that you're saying that you can do. Were there consequences for it? People were mad at me, but again, I just reiterated, and I stuck with it, and that's a theme that my character had throughout the game, and they knew that I had drawn the line in the sand that I will help you. We are all helping each other accomplish the thing that we all are looking to do, but there will be limits to it, and if I tell you not to do the thing because I am educated in this particular field, you better fucking listen to me. And I think in that regard, I could say that's what my character would do, but be able to justify it and not just use it as a dodge, because it wasn't a dodge. Had I been like a lawful evil character, I would have jumped into the fray, because that would have been my personal contract with everybody else. But because I was playing that particular alignment, because I had that thought process of who my character was, I felt it was justified, and John thought it was justified as well. So again, I think that comes down to everybody at the table understanding everybody's role, how everybody is playing their characters, their alignments, and having the storyteller go, you know, be able to mediate that and either agree or disagree and give you input as to what you should or should not be doing based on your moral code.
This reminds me of riding a bicycle.
Okay.
You don't think about how you're riding a bicycle when you're actually doing it, even though there's an immense amount of like coordination of mind and body and balance to make it happen.
Sure.
Like we're deconstructing all of these things right now, and we're talking about them, but like just take a second and think about how organically these all come together at a table.
Yes.
Like I think that constructing moral consensus and figuring out what taboo is and how we act, what my character would do, is something that we all just inherently do, like every day. We're social animals. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just enjoy that this is a complex calculus that we can dig into, but at the same time, like, everybody does it constantly without thinking about it. And you don't have to do it when you're playing a game. Like, games are for fun, and it's only like twisted weirdos like me who like to reflect on this stuff while it's going on. But it's not necessary. I enjoy that we can talk about this, and I enjoy that it doesn't have to be the focus of what's happening at the table.
Yeah, but I think depending on, like I said, I'm a person watcher, so it's always interesting to see the reactions and the decisions that people make in the game, and weigh that against who they are as a person, and that's kind of my ruler for what type of gamer a person is.
Okay.
Can they divorce themselves from their own moral code that they have as a person to try on a moral code that is completely different in the game structure?
So it makes me want to pose a question to the two of you. What characters have you played that you do not want to be judged by? You don't want somebody to see that character and then look at you and be like, oh, that guy.
Oh, geez. I played a recurring role as a bad guy in my friend's vampire campaign years ago, where I was Malkavian Methuselah. And the things I did, if I wrote a blog post about it, I'd be on an FBI watch list probably. I did vile things and I was completely insane. So there were things that I did that I had my crazy logic to, but to anyone else is like, oh my god. Because I skinned people. And sure. By people I mean all ages. I had a kind of a weird sex kind of dungeon that I didn't actually engage in, but I forced other people to engage in depraved acts.
Okay.
And there was a lot of things with my characters. Is he had a thing about inflicting suffering on other people. That was he would try to drive them mad by debasing them and by causing pain. That was my character's. That was the whole thing he did. Mm-hmm. He broke people by and the people that he would have in his little sex dungeon, he would find the actual honest to goodness Christian girl who really is moral and upright and believes all these good things and has her purity ring because she believes that she's saving herself. That's the person he would throw in there to break them. And I would, some of the stuff that that I came up with just for background. There's a part of me that I can come up with some really dark shit. And the players never saw all of it, which is actually probably good because one of them I actually became really good friends with, and I think she might think differently of me if she knew some of the stuff that they never discovered.
Sure.
What about you, Brad? Who do you want to not be associated with?
That's a tough question because
It's not Quincy Risk, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, hell no. He was mega awesome. He's like 20 times more awesome than I will ever be in my life. Usually the characters that I tend to play, and that would be in the LARPs, and I talked about this before, trying on a part of my persona, something that is a part of me that I don't entirely play around in as an entirety of my person. We all have different facets to who we are. And what I tend to do when I play games or create characters is grab that facet and just be that facet. So I think the only time that I have played something where I would not be proud of the things that I have done has been this villains game that we're playing. Having the class that I'm playing is the witch class, and I have taken that character and made it more of a specialist in potions, magic items, and in creating golems. And we ended up being at a place where there were parts of a golem, and we had to. It was partially organic and mostly inorganic. So it had a living brain in it. It had living eyes, and I had to, kill people to get the parts to, put the organic portion of that back together. In the game that we're playing, you also, but it's kind of that. Okay, the thing that I'm going to talk about is partially divorced from what we did because we did it as an organization. So we had the ability to trade drugs and, peddle flesh and things like that. But it wasn't anything that we did on a personal, at a character level. We created an organization, and the organization did that as a whole. But that's really the only thing that I can say that I've played a character that has been evil for the sake of being evil and to accumulate power and put myself in a position where, yeah, I've sold my soul to the devil, but I can also walk this path here where I can become a lich and I no longer have a soul and you can have no power over me, and breaking that contract. So that, I think, is the only thing that I could, I'm glad I didn't write anything down in a journal and have somebody find that someday, because some of the things that we did were kind of awful. But that feels like awful light, I don't think that I've really played a character that has been so awful that I'd be like, God, I hope nobody ever really finds that out. But this witch character is the only thing I can really think of offhand.
Sure. I'm just thinking about those experiences, like where I think the one shot, or thinking back. I met Brad and a lot of friends through playing this vampire LARP a long time ago.
Yeah.
And when you had people playing the LARP, and in another LARP that I did in Fox Valley where I didn't know anybody, you get to know them as their character first.
Yeah.
The person who you know is the character, and when you call somebody a name, you call them their character's name. My good friend Doc, who I've known since 1998 at Stevens Point, playing in GASP, Gamers Anonymous of Stevens Point. Shout out to that student organization if it still exists. And Doc was his character name. And now I'm 35, and I still call that man Doc. But I kind of love and dread the idea of meeting somebody and having them make a first impression of me when I'm pretending to be somebody else.
And you mentioned that LARP. I played a Malkavian named Lyle.
Yes, you did.
And that was, again, it's one of those things that's a persona, and that would be basically who I am, but like completely hyped up. I mean, that character was exhausting to play, and I did it for a short period of time because, I mean, literally, I would have to drink a lot of soda, and you get like halfway through the game, and I have to take a break. I need to be somewhere else because I have to find more energy to throw out. And nobody in that group, because I like you, I came in cold. I had bumped into a couple of people, and they said, hey, we do this thing in Stevens Point, and I showed up. And people only knew me as Lyle. They didn't know my real name for months. And people only knew me as that really weird guy that had I had the Star Trek phaser toy, and I had the tricorder toy, and I didn't believe that I actually had powers, but they were couched in these things that worked. I could use Auspex because I had the tricorder, and the tricorder told me the things that I learned.
It's nice that those people kept us.
Yeah, and the next character I played was a Tremere character who, not 100% likable, but did things in a brusque manner, but for the right reasons. And that was a weird shift, but yeah, I think at that point where I switched characters, people started to know my real name. That was kind of a weird thing. Yeah. Anyways, we've probably really gone far over time, but I think
Yes.
This is a very complex subject. I knew that as much as I wanted to not run too long, I don't think that there is a good way to tie up what is heroism, what is morality, what is comfort in a game in a short period of time. And I think that we've covered a lot of good ground, and I think we made and raised a lot of good points and have had a really, really awesome discussion. So thank you very much for the topic. I have to give you credit because a lot of this was your topic idea, Ian. So thank you. And I'm glad that you were able to join us and explore that more. I think we did good work here today. Good work.
I had a lot of fun. It was really nice to be here, and I want to assure everybody that when I'm actually playing a game, I'm not nearly so pretentious about this stuff.
No, and it's one of those things where if you deconstruct anything, you kind of sound like a jackass. You really do. You sound pretentious, but I think that at a certain point, in order for you to master the thing, you have to know how the thing works. There's no way to be good at something and not understand. You can't be a good magician if you don't understand the basics of a force or something like that. You have to be able to break something down to master it and understand it truly. So I think that exploring this subject is a good way to get a better handle. Oh, boy, that even sounded pretentious. It's a good way
you can't do it. You just can't do it.
You can't. I'm a pretentious ass, and yes, we talked about morality in games. So there you go. Suck it. And you all listened to it, so shame on you. So, anyways, we're gonna wrap things up. We're gonna talk about Hello, My Name Is, and kind of going back to what we talked about before. Hello, My Name Is your opportunity to go to galacticnetcasts.com and click on the Adventure Party podcast page, and there's a link there that says Hello, My Name Is, and you can type in information about a character that you have played. And if that player has been morally bankrupt and been a horrible individual, tell us about it. We'd love to talk about it and highlight you. If your character was a moral pillar of the community, we'll talk about that too. We're not too proud. So please stop by, check it out, and fill out a little bit of information. Yes, I do ask for your email address, but that only purpose of that is not to spam you, but it's to email you back a certificate if we talk about your character as suitable for framing, so that you can say, hey, my character was mentioned on the Adventure Party. I want to thank you very much, Ian, for coming on the show and talking about this very complex subject. I'm glad that you had the time to spare to talk with us about it.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And we'd love to have you back someday. I've got another idea for something in the future. It's something I think I want to talk about in the next couple of meetings of the Adventure Party that I would love to have you be a part of. So, yes, I will contact you and give you some more details on that. Okay. Speaking of which, you can go to the Adventure Party by going to galacticnetcasts.com. You can find us there. You can find us in all sorts of social media. Hell, we even have a Google Plus page. You can go to galacticnetcasts.com. You can see our YouTube channel. You can see there's quick links to our Facebook page, to Twitter. We're posting things all the time. If you're using iTunes or Stitcher, please take a moment and give us a review and let us know what you think. Your review, whether it's positive or negative, you're like, boy, this thing with Ian, that was pretentious crap. But it would tell us. Let us know what you think about it. Because your opinions and what you have to say can help make this show be a little bit better, and we'd appreciate you taking the time. Also, your reviews can also expose other people to the show. Which would be awesome. We'd love to add more members to the Adventure Party. So you can also leave us feedback by emailing galacticnetcasts@gmail.com, or you can call 805-328-3966, and you can leave a message, or You can text us at that number, which is really kind of an interesting thing. You can also go to galacticnetcast.com. While you're there, you can check out some of our other shows, The Alien Invasion, The Sci-Fi Geeks Club, and Weird World Weekly, which is a fun little 15-minute show. You can check those out. While you're there, you can also leave us a voice message on the website itself. We use WordPress. We've got a plugin where if you've got a microphone, you can just click the icon on the right-hand side and talk to your computer and let us know what you think. So I want to thank everybody for joining us at the Adventure Party, and may your characters never die and your adventures always be epic. Thanks, everybody.
Mwah.
Love ya.
And there it is.